Hello and welcome to the next video in our series, Journey Through the Map of Runterra. At this point we've gone through the jungles of Ixtal, journeyed over the deserts of Shudama, and to the peaks of Targon. Now it's time we set sail to the port city of Bilgewater. Bilgewater is located here on the right side of the map. Nestled away in the Blue Flame Isles archipelago, Bilgewater is a port city like no other, home to serpent hunters, dock gangs, and smugglers from across the known world. Here, fortunes are made and ambitions shattered in the blink of an eye. For those fleeing justice, debt, or persecution, Bilgewater can be a place of new beginnings, for no one on these twisted streets cares about your past. Even so, with each new dawn, careless travelers can always be found floating in the harbor, their purses empty and their throats slit. While incredibly dangerous, Bilgewater is ripe with opportunity. Free from the shackles of formal government and trade regulation, if you have the coin, almost anything can be purchased here, from outlawed hextech to the favor of local crime lords. With the recent removal of the last River King of Bilgewater, the city has entered a period of transition, while the most prominent captains try to agree on its future. But as long as there are seaworthy ships and crews to sail them, Bilgewater is likely to remain one of the most colorful and well-connected places in Runterra. Now let us look at the champions of Bilgewater, those you might find should you journey there. We'll do separate videos on each of these champions, but for now this is more an overview of the zone, so I'm only going to touch briefly on each of these guys. Fizz, the tidal Trickster. Fizz is an amphibious yordle who dwells among the reefs surrounding Bilgewater. He often retrieves and returns the tiths cast into the sea by superstitious captains, but even the saltiest of sailors know better than to cross him, for many are the tales of those who have underestimated this slippery character. Gangplank, the saltwater scourge. As unpredictable as he is brutal, the dethroned River King Gangplank is feared far and wide. Once he ruled the port city of Bilgewater, and while his reign is over, there are those who believe this has only made him more dangerous. Graves, the outlaw. Malcolm Graves is a renowned mercenary gambler and thief, a wanted man in every city and empire he has visited. Even though he has an explosive temper, he possesses a sense of criminal honor, often enforced at the business end of his double-barreled shotgun. Illaoi, the Kraken priestess. Illaoi's powerful physique is dwarfed only by her indomitable faith. As the prophet of the great Kraken, she uses a huge golden idol to rip her foes' spirits from their bodies and shatter their perception of reality. Misfortune, a bounty hunter. A Bilgewater captain famed for her looks but feared for her ruthlessness, Sarah Fortune paints a stark figure among the hardened criminals of the port city. As a child, she witnessed the River King Gangplank murder her family, an act she brutally avenged years later, blowing up his flagship while he was still aboard. Pike, the Blood Harbor Ripper. A renowned harpooner from the slaughter docks of Bilgewater, Pike should have met his death in the belly of a gigantic gullfish, and yet he returned. Now striking the dank alleys and backways of his former hometown, he uses his new supernatural gifts to bring a swift justice and gruesome end to those who make their fortune by exploiting others. And a city that prides itself on hunting monsters now finds a monster hunting them. Nautilus, the Titan of the Depths. A lonely legend, as old as the first pyres sunk in Bilgewater, the armored Goliath known as Nautilus roams the dark waters off the coast of the Blue Flame Isles. Driven by a forgotten betrayal, he strikes without warning, swinging his enormous anchor to save the wretched and drag the greedy to their doom. It is said he comes for those who forgot to pay the Bilgewater tithe, pulling them down beneath the waves with him, an ironclad reminder that none can escape the depths. Tahm Kench, the River King. Known by many names throughout history, the demon Tahm Kench travels the waterways of Runterra, feeding his insatiable appetite with the misery of others. Though he may appear singularly charming and proud, he swaggers through the physical realm like a vagabond in search of unsuspecting prey. His lashing tongue can stun a heavily armored warrior from a dozen paces, and a fall into his rumbling belly is to tumble into an abyss from which there is little hope of return. Twisted Fate, the Card Master. Twisted Fate is an infamous card sharp and swindler who has gambled and charmed his way across much of the known world, earning the enmity and admiration of the rich and foolish alike. He rarely takes things seriously, greeting each day with a mocking smile and an insouciant swagger. In every possible way, Twisted Fate always has an ace up his sleeve. And I will skip a lot of the individual stories in Bilgewater and we'll save those for other videos, otherwise this one will get way too long. This one's going to focus completely on the zone. So let's get into Bilgewater itself. Surrounded by treacherous straits and towering cliffs, Bilgewater Bay is as dangerous as those who call it home. Visitors are often seduced by seemingly limitless opportunity and become permanent residents, realizing that the longer they stay, the more they can exploit others for power and wealth. Looming over the main harbor is Butcher's Bridge, an ancient stone overpass built into the cliffs connecting the bustling piers with the notorious slums beyond. Some still use it to access the temple of Nagakaburos, but most now gather here to fight duels and exchange their illicit wares. Lacking natural resources for construction, much of Bilgewater has been built up with whatever people can find or steal, be it repurposed masonry or even the broken hulls of the ships they traveled in. Bilgewater's lowest inhabitants dwell in a labyrinth of meandering canals and hidden inlets, with no separation between the homes they build and the sea where they ply their trade. Indeed, traversing perilous waters is not just an occupational hazard, but part of daily life. Various settlements within the greater city have been built upon the remains of a far older civilization. Long-abandoned temples have been converted into homes and places of business, with scaffold walkways leading from one establishment to another. Sea monster attacks are a constant threat around Bilgewater, but over the years, a myriad of lucrative industries have grown out of hunting and harvesting the massive creatures. Vessels haul them back to port to be rendered down into meat, oil, hides, armored scales, even bones and teeth, for sale at the thriving dockside market. These are known as the slaughter docks. From McGregor's Kill House to the renowned outfits of Blood Harbor, slaughter docks operate day and night to turn death into profit. Only the most successful captains can ever hope to run their own dock, so most are forced to haggle for the best deal before their prize begins to rot in the water. There is a commonly accepted truth in Bilgewater: the higher you climb, the less likely you are to drown. Those with money in their pockets will frequent the uptown taverns, enjoying fine drink and merry conversation, even though in a day or two they'll be back down at the wharf, wrangling a crew for the next dismal voyage. While much of Valoran knows the archipelago as the Blue Flame Isles, to the indigenous people of Buhru, they have only ever been known as the Serpent Isles. Buhru's ancient culture is highly respected, reflected, and sometimes imitated in the daily life of Bilgewater, including traditional medicine and monster hunting techniques. Central to Buhru culture is the Nagakaburos, god of life, growth, and perpetual motion, also known as the Mother Serpent, the Great Kraken, or the Bearded Lady. She is commonly depicted as an enormous monstrous head with many sprawling tentacles. Now we know Bilgewater the place, let's look at Bilgewater the people. Bilgewater is home to serpent hunters, dock gang smugglers from across the known world. For those fleeing justice, debt, or persecution, Bilgewater can be a place of new beginnings, for no one on these twisted streets cares about your past. One of the most important roles on a hunting crew is the harpooner, who hooks and slays the beasts. An entire crews will be built around a veteran who can teach others a thing or two along the way. Many harpooners are marksmen, or particularly fearless free divers, but few survive long enough for their reputation to become widely known. A fixture of every floating graveyard, these grim sailors ferry the dead out to their final resting place. These are known as the boatmen. So that's a quick look at Bilgewater's people. Let's look at Bilgewater's culture. Bilgewater's swords are protected by the horns that, when blown, disorient the waves through the waters to disguise Bilgewater's location from the sea monsters. These are known as the serpent callers. It is unknown whether sea monsters around Bilgewater inspired the beliefs in the mother serpent, or vice versa. Nonetheless, leviathans have become a staple in Bilgewater's varied cultures. The closest you can get to laws and government in Bilgewater is the bounty board. Written on it are the names of the most wanted criminals of Bilgewater, ranked by how much would be paid for their heads. It is said that the River King Gangplank regularly added a silver serpent to his own bounty as an open challenge to the entire city. In Bilgewater, the dead are not buried, they are given back to the ocean. The port's graveyard consists of innumerable floating buoys, below which are sunk the corpses of the dead. The wealthy are interred within expensive submerged caskets below lavish bobbing tombstones, while the poor are often tied in mass to old anchors beneath waterlogged barrels. These are some weapons you might find in Bilgewater. I'm really curious about the middle one, which looks like a whip, but using the squid's arms as its ends. And finally, tools of the trade. The most skilled monster hunters know the old ways are often the best. Following the traditions of the Serpent Isles, these cunning traps and vicious hooks are each crafted for luring and slaying specific creatures, and such implements will be passed down from generation to generation. So that's it for Bilgewater. Honestly, one of the zones I'm most excited to explore more about. It's one of my favorite zones in all of Runeterra. I really like the Butcher's Bridge and how they're fighting duels underneath. It gives me like a PvP vibe. And then I also like the idea of the sea monsters. The sea monster idea is awesome. And there's actually a movie called Sea Monster on Netflix. I recommend checking that out. It's a kid's movie, but it's honestly pretty good. And they have like the slaughter docks and all this stuff, and the ships, pirate ships, basically going out and hunting monsters, giant sea monsters. Bilgewater is an awesome zone. I'm really excited to explore more of it with you guys. If you have a recommendation of the next zone we should explore on our journey of Runterra, leave it in the comment section below. Until next time, I hope you guys enjoyed this one on Bilgewater, and I'll see you in the next video.